This video is all about the positives around the coronavirus. Now, although that may sound crazy considering it's killed over 25,000 people to the date of this recording and crippled the world's economy in a relatively short amount of time, but I believe every time there's a negative, there's a positive, and every time there's change in the world, there's going to be great opportunities. So let's jump into it. Welcome to Seeking Unemployment, a show dedicated to the most efficient path to financial freedom. Let's talk about positives, starting with the environment. If we're all able to reduce the greenhouse gases, we should be able to see a huge change in our ecosystem. Now, although the story of dolphins returning to Venice are false, there are amazing satellite images of areas hit hard by the pandemic showing a clear before and after state. One with far more and one with far less pollution levels. Now, although these levels are likely to return as soon as this period ends, a much more reasonable and sustainable option is for the world to take a break from work one day of the week, the most likely day being Sundays. One day per week would make a huge difference for family relationships and the environment. We all need a break, including nature. Besides, for those who believe in the Old Testament, which technically is most of the world, including Jews and Muslims, that includes the 10 Commandments. Now, commandment number 4 out of the 10 is to keep the Sabbath day holy. Now, this is something that's very subjective and people will observe the Sabbath day in their own way. But if we were better at that, if we were better at making that a different day, a day where we relax and we just take a break from everything, we would have stronger families, a stronger environment, and I believe a stronger economy due to happier and more productive employees. Now let's move on to social benefits. In an incredibly divided world where everyone seems to be fighting with each other, this is the one thing that has truly banded us together as humanity, that we will all together fight this virus by just staying inside and not getting sick. One thing I've noticed big time is I've gotten lots of calls and texts from friends that I haven't even seen in a long time, just checking in, see how I'm doing, making sure that I'm okay, and just talking about life in general, not even necessarily talking about business, which I think is so cool and such a neat thing to see the humanity of everyone coming out in a time like this. And it shows that we're able to really bond together as people. Now on to the economic benefits. I like to think of personal finance in terms of offense and defense. Defense would be to slow spending and offense would be to increase earnings. Now let's start with defense. So the coronavirus has shown us how important it is to have cash reserves for emergencies. A lot of people suggest having 6 months of cash reserves just in case something bad happens to you and you need to find a new job. This is a very, very good idea. And anybody who has abided by that really has nothing to worry about throughout this downturn. Going past that, we have a situation where many mortgages are being forgiven or postponed for many, many months. I've heard as much as 12 months where you don't have to pay your mortgage at all. Now, a lot of times you'll have at the end of that, the full, let's say 12 months due all at once without any penalties, but you're still getting a reprieve from that, which is a huge deal for a lot of people. Now, by reprieve, it doesn't mean those requirements are deleted. It just means that they're pushed back. And a lot of times what you'll see is the mortgage will end a year later, or maybe several months later after that, let's say 30-year period, if that's the full duration of the loan. So all the money is not being forgiven. It's simply being postponed. The government is also stepping in by sending out a stimulus package to those hit the hardest with no work. So I'm not sure exactly the details on what you need to do to prove that you have no income coming in, but it's really cool to see them stepping in. I've heard that each adult is getting $1,200 and each child is getting $500. So for my personal family, I have a wife and 2 little children. So that would be $500 per child, $1,200 for me, $1,200 for my wife, or $3,400 total as just a government stimulus for me since I am completely out of work. So that's pretty nice. And it's a very cool way to see the government stepping in a crisis where they're requiring people to stay home And so because they're requiring it, it makes a lot of sense that they would come in and pick up economically where they're making people fall a little short. Next thing is new mortgage rates are expected to hit the lowest levels in all time history. So if you wanted to do a refi, you could go and save a ton of money by, getting a refi at your mortgage lender. So the government is also helping us out by pushing the tax date back by, I think it was about 90 days. So that should also help people who had a big tax burden due coming in April. Now moving on to a good offense. How do we make more money with this change? Because with change comes opportunities, especially in business and especially for business owners and stock market investors who are able to make a little bit of a pivot as the world shifts and changes. So one great example of this is Ford. They've been looking into retooling their factory for medical devices and medical supplies from auto parts. So that's pretty cool that they would be able to actually start creating medical devices like respirators, for example, for hospitals. I know several beer companies are now making hand sanitizer, which makes a lot of sense because I guess the alcohol that they've been producing is now putting in a hand sanitizer and helping people keep their hands sterile from the virus. If you're big into investing in the stock market, you can always be strategic about which industries have lost more value than you think that they deserve. This is all strategy play on your own, or you should talk to your own financial advisor about where you would like to shift funds. But that can be a great way to make some extra money during this time. And any other business who's able to sell something like large quantities of medical masks or medical supplies or pivot to be able to create those would do really, really well. Now with the economy, there are so many other ways that you can make money in a down market like this. I don't want to go into all of them. That's probably a video for another day, but the future is bright for people who are able to pivot and see where the opportunities lie. So that part I love because it really requires a lot of creativity and understanding of business fundamentals. Another cool thing is that businesses who are against employees working from home are being forced to allow those workers to work from home and finding out that everything's actually okay and that productivity hasn't slowed down, which is great. I think that's a really cool wake-up call for a lot of businesses, and it can be a great way for them to be able to expand their workforce without needing to get larger office space. Moving on to family life. So I called a bunch of my friends to see how they're dealing with things, and many said they love having all the extra time with their family. This is more time than they've ever had through the weeks to spend with their kids. My brother was able to potty train their little daughter because they had all day to be able to watch her. Being able to work on your house. Everybody has a long list of things that need to get done around your house, but you're always too busy to get to them. Now is a great time to take on those little issues like those honey-do list items. My friend told me that Home Depot and Lowe's are completely packed right now with people taking that opportunity to do exactly that and just do some really nice home improvements. Another great thing to do is revising your home budget to cut out unnecessary things. As the economy is likely to shrink a little bit, it's a smart thing to be able to pull back on your own spending a little bit and be able to be ready for the future as it shifts a little bit. One lesson for the future is to stock things in emergency preparedness, not necessarily based on needs, but based on how other crazy people are going to hoard things like toilet paper. So I thought that was so fascinating because I never looked at emergency preparedness in that way. It was always make sure you have plenty of water, plenty of food, things that are basic essentials like that. But what about a time like this where we're just pulling back a little bit? This isn't zombie apocalypse time, even though some people might feel that way because they're so overcome with the fear that's being perpetuated by the news. This is a very simple thing where we just need to stay home and not go shopping too much. So, having TP, I guess people are just really wanting to never leave their home. So overall, I think it's fascinating to need to plan your emergency preparedness based off of others' own psychology. So many people are spending more time with their family. I think that's a huge positive. And hopefully as society, we realize how important this is and we're able to make changes to incorporate that into everyone's lives going forward. So we're able to all spend more time with our family, more time with our loved ones, and just be happier as a society. Another great positive is that people are forced to make more food at home, not eating out as much, which is typically a much healthier and a better way to go. And it helps you become a better cook. And the last and final thing that I'll talk about is we all now have a little bit more time on our hands. So we can spend that on things like self-inflection, self-improvement, maybe reading that book you've always been wanting to get a hold of. It's a really, really cool time to be able to just have a little bit more time. And I highly encourage everybody to really use that for things other than sitting at home, watching Dancing with the Stars and playing video games. So those are a couple positive ideas that I was able to come up with. I think it's so important in times of tragedy and times where the news media is so hellbent on driving so much fear into society that we take a step back and we realize, you guys, the sky is not falling. Yes, we're going through a little bit of a challenge right now, but we'll come out of it and we're going to come out stronger than we ever were before. And so we got to all hang in there. It's going to be great, guys. The future is bright, and we'll see you on the next video.